All right, thanks, Jason. Yeah, it's this is for those who don't know, it's actually year 24, season 47, episode 8 of KGB Monday Night Poetry. We're just trying to keep the train rolling. We've been doing it for God. It's been almost a year that we've been doing it like this now, hasn't it? And we're hoping KGB Bar will survive this whole thing because, as we've pointed out a few times, they can't, like a lot of restaurants, open up on the side of the street and that sort of thing. So, but hopefully we can see everybody here over there at some point. And when we take a break between readers, we'll share with you a place where you can kind of contribute and maybe help them keep on their feet if you are so inclined. And that is about all from me. I'll pass it over to one of my esteemed co-curators.
All right. So it is my honor to introduce Natasha Saje. Many writers have a slightly mystical relationship to their own writing, as a dyed-in-the-wool materialist who scoffs at all things astrological, psychic, or magic. You can be confident that I have a tiny catalog of hauntings and talismans that I won't exactly admit to, but also won't exactly deny. But my most important talisman, my most important spell is a copy of Natasha Saye's first book, read under this, which, for heaven's sake, sorry, I have to turn off the virtual background so you can see this. So you will lose the sense that I'm at KGB. But it is the first book of Natasha Saye, Read Under the Skin, which won the Agnes Lynch Starrett Prize in 1993, and which I own in a gorgeous green hardback with red foil letters. When I cannot write, there's only one sure thing I can do to get the pen moving across the page, and that is read this book. I have taught this book many times. It has opened many doors for me, and lest you doubt my commitment, I present you with this wooden egg painted as a staff building exercise. Oh, sorry. Painted as a staff building exercise at the University of Maryland with the first line of Natasha Saye's masterful poem, Agoraphobia, a poem that I have memorized and recited, a poem that has taught me a nearly infinite set of skills and moves that one can make as a poet. I discovered Saye's work because she was finishing her PhD at the University of Maryland when I was starting my bachelor's degree, and all my poet friends were raving about her and her class. I even sent her, and these were the days when email was something you got when you went to college, a poem to ask for her advice. And months later, after it had fallen to the bottom of her inbox, she read my poem and wrote me a stunningly beautiful letter that is sadly lost to the pixels of time and deactivated email addresses. Since that debut collection, Saye has written compelling scholarship, powerful poetry, and moving lyric essays. Saye's Windows and Doors, A Poet Reads Literary Theory, is a compelling and engaging account of how poetry might fruitfully be approached as a scholar, and whatever you know about poetic form, I promise you will know more after reading this book. Saye is a generous scholar, always making room for her reader to find new ways forward and to reconsider their own well-trod paths. In her most recent poetry collection, Vivarium, she created a book-length abecedarian that carries the reader across the landscape of humanized etymologies. Saye's modern love essay in the New York Times about watching The Wire in Baltimore with her dying husband is heartrending, and her newest book, Terroir, is a collection of memoirs and essays. Saye's life is as varied and eventful as her poems, and even the briefest biological sketch would take me more time than an introduction should take. The pandemic has forced us out of KGB bar and into this cyberspace. And one of the biggest upsides of that transition is that I now have the honor of asking you to join me in welcoming to the virtual podium, Natasha Saye. Please join me in a huge round of applause. It will be silent because we all have our microphones muted. Natasha Saye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jason, for that lovely introduction and for reading my work all these years, and Matthew and John for co-hosting. Funny you should mention astrology. I'm going to start with a little piece from the memoir and then read poems from a chapbook that's coming out from Diode Editions in the summer. It's called Special Delivery. But I'll start with a little piece from the memoir. So this is from a chapter titled Line Upon Line, and it's about religion, love, and ways of knowing. At 18, home from college for Christmas, I paid for a session with a psychic who read palms. Born with myriad fine and deep lines on my palms and foot soles, a genetic condition inherited from my mother, I wondered what a palm reader would say about them. Palmistry was one of the ways I sought to understand who I was or could be. At 15, I bought a computer generated chart informing me that, in addition to a Gemini sun, I had the moon in Cancer, Sagittarius rising, Venus in Taurus, and Mercury in Gemini. I consulted these certainties when I felt confused, which was often. Sagittarius rising meant, for example, that I experience life as a quest for meaning and that I need an outlet for my energies. The generality of the wisdom nuggets didn't discourage me. On a mission to understand myself and others, I was as fervid as a badger digging for a vole, and as stealthy, for my parents, I thought, didn't have a clue about the hobbies to which I devoted so many hours. I also started analyzing handwriting. With graphology books spread out in front of me, I would create a portrait of the person from their script, looking at spacing, shape, slant, and letter formation. A blank page allows the hand, ambassador for the body, to express feelings about the past, the future, about giving and taking, about saying I. I even consciously altered my own handwriting to align with how I wanted to be, eliminating the affected cap on the lowercase a and using a single stroke capital I. I didn't know then that graphology is a pseudoscience, a way of knowing that cannot be proven. The 40-minute appointment with the psychic palm reader, a suburban housewife, took place in the airy kitchen of her colonial in Bergen County, New Jersey. She had come recommended by a friend with whom I shared not only a quest for self-knowledge, but a sense of unfulfillment. We yearned for a mademoiselle whirl of parties with boys professing endless love. At the same time, we nurtured arcane passions and refused to smooth the edges of our intellects in order to attract boys. I was a slate on which crisscrossed two very different kinds of writing: the 70s dominant culture's block type and the often illegible cursive of my own oddities. I thought I could find out everything I needed to know. While I had secretly chosen the University of Virginia in part because the ratio of men to women 8-1 favored my getting dates. After a fraternity party the first week of college, boys in docksiders and chinos drinking Kool-Aid laced with grain alcohol dropped off my list of interests. At the same time, in a first-year seminar called Sense and Nonsense in the Game of Reading, the brilliant and wacky professor sat cross-legged like a Buddha on the coffee table in the dorm's basement lounge, reciting Wallace Stevens' poem, The Idea of Order at Key West, or William Blake's The Garden of Love. Blake's poem describes a locked chapel built on a green and ends, priests in black gowns were walking their rounds and binding with briars my joys and desires. It was a poem I too memorized. Blake's unconventional for his era ideas included sexual and racial equality, and his mysticism encouraged me to delve deeper into realms beyond here and now. Perhaps many teenagers are obsessed with divination at this time in their lives when anything seems possible, yet little can be attained. The word divination has as its root divus, godlike, because gods know what humans don't. In Greek mythology, three fates are responsible for determining someone's thread of life. Clotho spins it, Achesis draws it out, and Atropos cuts it. In the Bible, Job 14 reads, "A person's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed. So look away from him and let him alone till he has put in his time like a hired laborer." This suggests that God determines a person's lifespan, but not her fate. The psychic was careful to preface her remarks with something like, "Nothing I tell you cannot be altered by your own actions." I remember little else of what she said except for one thing. You will find your soulmate in middle age. I must have looked horrified about the wait because she quickly added, "Oh, don't worry, you will love and be loved. It's just that this relationship will be different." Given the divorce rate in the US, her prediction could have just been a good bet. I'll stop there and I'll read some poems. So I've been living in Utah for 23 years. And this group of epistolary poems was really fun to write. Some of them are addressed to people, others are addressed to entities. This one is titled Dear Utah. Dear Utah, state in which I have lived longer than any other, state of my discontent. Horace said, skies change, souls don't. Although, like most, I blame anything but myself. You were the place where I moved for work and the place I've complained about for 1/3 of my life, the locus I'm trapped in, an aging otter in an arid zoo. You are my theremin, vibrations and tremors I feel without touch. Sometimes a flyover sense of being left alone, even though the bank teller calls me by my first name. We Utahns wear jeans to the symphony and use family as an excuse for not showing up. We drive streets wider than highways while the blessed call the shots where 1 in 5 carries a gun. I roll my eyes at special rings and garments that mark me as having no ward. You are the state I must explain. Watery beer or restaurants near schools without liquor. You are also the state where I'm never lost. Your mountains close, gray rock in summer, whiter in winter, green in May before drought. They tell me where and when I am, along with the copper mine seen from space, the salt lake too shallow to swim, the townhouses jammed into crevices of valley like aphids on a leaf. Humans are edged by wilderness where elk, coyotes, moose, and mountain lions, and no mosquitoes, no mold, roam. Oh, Utah, you're a kinky rectangle, and I'm a pear wasted on a December tree. We're both queer as cupcakes, except you pretend you're white bread. Let's check this. So this one is titled To Caitlyn Jenner. Um, and I went through a lot of revision. I had to make a discovery, as is often the case when you're writing poems. You have to discover something that you're really surprised at. So that was the ending of this poem. And I'm embarrassed about the times that I read it before I got to the new ending. In any case, it quotes from Caitlyn too. You say, there's more to being a woman than hair and makeup. What? Swaying walk, tender heart. My wife likes polish now and then, a woman who's never worn pink or a push-up bra. In the pool, scarlet toes make me look twice. The color glints like blood. I look and look again as when I eye your shift from Bruce to Kate, your lifelong dream lived late. I will be able to live authentically as female, but I've missed so much. Authentic, from one's own authority. It's quite a dream to have a body that does not get in the way of who we are. I cleaned the whole closet out. The boy stuff is gone. You wear your heart, let arrows pierce it. My method is blending in. no gazing in the glass, and as I age, I'm ever more invisible. Still, it's a different thing to take down womanhood instead of build it from scratch, a line drawn in the dirt. I'd like to start anew. I'm a crumbling bridge between who I am and what I like. I wouldn't mind losing the breasts. Their squish, their sag and flop. But what would balance skillet-wide hips and buttocks round as cabbages? I'd shrink those too. I'd choose a boy's narrow pelvis, flat chest, muscled. Yours, before, come to think of it. Note, we both said boy, youth and power in every move. I don't have to justify. When everybody is a field of claim, differences aren't small. I know the itch to float, to choose my sex and who I love as I choose clothes, each day a palette or a lump of clay. You want to be yourself, get dressed, get ready to go out, and just be like a normal person. I take for granted what you've never had. Fairness depends on where we start. So I'll read a couple more. This one is titled To Alcohol, and the second half of the poem is actually addressed to alcohol. I remember the stale smell of urine and skin in the heat of the boiler room, my superintendent father's broom shooing out two men. Bums, he called them to my mother, who scrubbed the floor with bleach. And years later, a party where my father drank so much he couldn't fit the key into the car door. My mother begging, let me drive. Me in the back seat not knowing. Alcohol had reduced the force at which his heart beat and was seeping into his lungs to fill our vehicle with haze. In excess, everything is poison, even kale or water. I could live without vodka, brandy, rum, without vanilla extract, without beer, and more sadly, without wine, and it's inspiring. You've never hung me over. Although one night in a hilltop restaurant, after a waiter plied me with 5 courses and 5 glasses of wine, I refused to pay a bet I lost, waving my arms like fumes. I did not like the person I became. You are ready and waiting any time of the year or day. If only science would make yeast not ferment sugar. Surely easier than cloning sheep or curing Ebola. Leavened bread, a small sacrifice for reimagining the earth as ancient North America or Australia, where tribes had no brewing. You are a clump of soft fur at the back of the throat, music that shifts from ditty to dirge. I suspect my gripe is not with you, but with the fact that humans are not only the animals who often don't know when to stop, but are also the only animals who understand why they can't. And I'll read one, let's see, what time is it? I'll read 2 more poems. So this one is titled To Jolene. It's not the Dolly Parton Jolene. It's a pseudonym I have given a real person, and the poem will explain. You don't know me, or rather you know me only as one of the women who jog in the pool you manage, a pool with mostly old people and children in 87-degree water that keeps away serious swimmers. But I have come to know you, albeit in a relentlessly odd way, because while I'm there with my head out of the water and my glasses on, I like to look around. And for 4 years, I've heard and watched you. Your great haircut and dye job, the brown under the blonde, in your case, in my opinion, quite chic. The bob suits your square jaw. You like to blow the whistle on miscreants, talking in lap lanes or running on the deck. This embarrassed another water jogger so much she stopped coming. When you did it to me, it piqued my interest. I too like to keep people in line. When I see someone using a handicapped parking spot and walking very well indeed, I say something. This could get me into trouble, I know, but I've got gray hair, so maybe not. This letter is a different kind of trouble. Trouble, turbid, cloudy, appropriate for a body of water in which nearly every swimmer pees. The whole world is murky sometimes, most of all the people in it. What do I know? How sweet you are, giving a lesson to a 3-year-old and her mother. You clearly like your job of imparting the joy of flotation. And you've kept fit, albeit a weight gain of 15 or so pounds, distributed evenly. You cover up more quickly now, so I expect you're self-conscious. I used to be, before I channeled my 92-year-old aunt, minus 2 breasts and wrinkled all the way to the bone. Menopause requires a shift in eating habits. I skip dinner a few times a week. You take out from Jasmine on Thursday nights, sprinting into your glass-walled office with white and red plastic bags in your hands, then closing the blinds. Paying attention is a kind of love, Jolene, though I'm not attracted to you, not after that first year when the internet told me you moved to Utah for college, married Jared, bought a 3-bedroom house and had 2 children, a daughter who should be 21 now, although I can't find her online, a son born 2 years later. 12 years ago, you were quoted in a newspaper about the difficulty of keeping children safe. More recently, a sister-in-law died mysteriously in a canyon, her remains found years later. I wonder about Jared, installing floors all day, and then sitting in the high school gym bleachers, cheering your son. You loved your grandpa's silver dollar pancakes and still use the steamer he gave you in Elmira. But I wonder whether you're happy, whether your life turned out the way you dreamed, what you dreamed. You're a registered Republican, Jolene, not surprising in light of Jared's Mormonism, although your Catholicism gave you, we could say, more choice. I expect we're on opposite sides of most issues, including whether water joggers should be allowed to use the lap lanes. I give to Planned Parenthood. Your donations are a mystery. I wonder why I care. Should I get a waterproof iPod and listen to Serial? Is my biographical impulse merely learning facts and constructing a narrative? A version of reading like prognostication, intuiting the divine? Whatever my purpose, I assure you it is not evil. Freud might ascribe it to loneliness, an only childhood. Jung might call you a shadow. Or this could be my letter to the world that never wrote to me. I've written letters to others who won't write back. The Festus disc, Caitlyn Jenner, alcohol, spilling secrets in poems. Works of imagination, mind you, not journalism. Fearing all the while that the worst thing in life might be to not be known at all. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Muted. Everyone can unmute themselves now. You can unmute yourself and you can applaud.
My eye situation, I had to read from the screen, so I wasn't able to, like see your faces. I hope I was audible.
That was
Thank you.
wonderful. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, totally. It was perfectly. Yeah, thank you so much.
And we did have a question in the chat about whether or not you did find love in middle age.
You have to read the memoir to find out.
Oh.
That's the big surprise. Yes.
You have an encouraging note from Don Yorty too. I found love in old age. So.
Yeah.
and a few favorite lines quoted by Jaeger. Yeah, beautiful reading. Thank you so much.
I think we'd all have happily had more. Way to leave the crowd, Natasha. Those were beautiful poems, wise poems.
Like this one that you quoted a second ago, Matt, about where it says installing floors all day and then sitting in bleachers to watch his growing son. Not only does it have a great cadence, it's just a beautiful thought.
Yeah, just beautifully, you know, the arms waving like fumes. I like, I mean, I love direct address of poem, direct address of poems, direct address of poems. You know, especially to these abstractions that are really hard to have a wrangle with, almost outside of the, you know, that space of the poem, but you can really explore deeply your relationship to anything, any substance, and that was a really good one.
Oh, wait, JD, you're muted. Go ahead.
I wanted to know when the memoir was coming out. I was really enthralled in that.
It's out. It's came out in November last year, and it's a finalist for the Penn Diamondstein Vogelspiel essay award. So
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm excited. The difference between publishing poetry and prose about poetry and publishing prose is amazing. I recommend it to you. People actually read, you know, normal people, like not poets, your neighbors, people from your past, they're interested in the prose where they wouldn't, you know, they don't care about the poems. So it's been a hoot to publish something that more people will read. You know, instead of 800 copies, there's maybe probably 3,000 out there.
And I posted the link if you want to order Terroir through Bookshop. And if you order through Bookshop, then you are supporting independent bookstores rather than Amazon.
Thank you.
And we have, in case anybody's interested, I'll just throw it out there. We have an open mic coming up. We do this once a season, and people read for 3 minutes, and it's kind of a gong showy kind of thing. You just read quick for 3 minutes. Everybody gets scored by everyone else who's watching, and then whoever wins gets to attach themselves to any bill that they choose in the next season. So we've had people read with some pretty great poets before, and yeah, if anybody's interested, just shoot a message over to Jason, KGB bar, right here just during this, or maybe email after. And then I put the Fundly link. I'll put it again. Or if you want to maybe share.
Also you can DM, you can direct message if you have an Instagram or a Facebook. You could always message that Facebook page or direct message the Instagram page. We also have a link tree now. I'm gonna put the link for the link tree. It's gonna have the Fundly link. I believe it has the KGB Monday night. It has all 3 links that you need for funding and for the schedule. I'm gonna put that in right now.
And people are already signing up. So we'll consider our break having already started. And I will also mention that, as you know, KGB is a bar, and it's pretend behind me. It's not really behind me. But we're not there. We're not there drinking. We're not buying drinks. We're not tipping our bartenders. And so if you'd like to help keep, oh dear, I messed this up. Yeah, did you want to keep talking about Linktree while I fix my mistake?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I think I fixed it. I was going to say, do you want to keep talking about Linktree while I fix my mistake? But I fixed it.
Yeah.
So here, here is the Fundly website, and John also put the link in the chat. But if you'd like to go to Fundly, there are giving levels. It's like $15, $25, $55, but you can give whatever you want. If you want to give $3, if you want to give $5, if you want to give $10, that's totally fine. The levels actually get you something. We're sort of like public radio now, where, you know, if you give at X level, then you get X prize. So if you give $15, there will be 2 drinks waiting for you, and you send a $4 tip right now. MFA is 25 with 3 drinks and a $7 tip, and it goes up to $50,000. No one has chosen this level yet, but we're hoping that someone tonight, because if you pick the $50,000 level, you get a $45,000 bar tab.
So it's really like you get a free $50,000 for only spending $5,000. If you want to think of it that way, you just got to drink your way to financial.
Right. It's an investment.
Yeah.
It's really planning for your alcohol intake future. It's making sure that whenever you're in the East Village, you have a lifetime supply of gin and tonics, or White Russians, or vodka sodas, whatever it is that, you know, pick your poison, as they say.
Well, because 45 grand's a lot.
45 grand is a lot,
For a buck.
and it's a lot of alcohol. And we assume that you'll be generous. We assume that if you choose the $50,000, you're going to be, drinks are on you for a little while. At any rate, yes, Leslie Prosterman says you'll make a lot of new friends. You'll be
Well,
very
what if you're on the
popular.
West Coast?
It's a good question. What would you like? What could we do if you're on the West Coast? How would, like, do you want us to like FedEx you little like pouches of drinks, or?
I don't know. I have to think about it.
We need a pipeline.
Yeah, you tell us
It's
what
funny,
you'd like.
shady bootlegging we could do. You know what I mean?
I don't know, maybe a gift certificate.
But that wouldn't help, because you know what we'd have to do is we'd have to create a relationship with a sister bar or a sibling bar where you are,
Yeah.
so that you have a way to spend the $45,000 without being in New York and while being on the West Coast.
Okay, that would work.
Although for 45, I mean, you could have a really nice New York vacation for $50,000.
How about a sister bookstore?
Would also work. You could
Amazon.
be
No, just kidding.
drunk on literature. Kama is asking. Oh, wait, let me. Okay, so has everyone
Natasha,
has everyone like gone to the bathroom, refreshed their drinks? Are we ready to start moving into the second
Jason?
half? Yeah.
Oh, I was saying that we could always do like the t-shirt thing where like we can do the KGB bar t-shirts again, and the proceeds can go, half of the proceeds can go to like the Fundly account, possibly.
That would be an interesting idea, but can we
can
come
talk
up
about
with
that later.
$45,000 worth of t-shirts? Like, that's so many t-shirts.
Well, I mean, I love selling things up the side of the road, so we can make it happen.
Or we could just declare ourselves fashionistas and be like, yes, this is, I'll do it with an accent, because that's how I imagine people at Fashion Week. But it'll be a French accent. It'll be like, yes, this is a $300 t-shirt.
Yeah,
This t-shirt was $1,000.
sell it as vintage. If people think it's like a vintage, I mean, especially if it has like a vintage design to it, people will like eat it up. So
I think if I can afford to donate that amount, that I can probably afford a trip. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, that's a like the trip might even be on the flight might even be on the bar at that point. You know what I mean? With their new endowment, they can probably afford a trip.
Right, are we ready to move to the second half?
Do it.
All right.
Are we recording?
We never stopped.
Oh, we haven't even stopped.
We haven't stopped recording. Yeah,
Oh,
no, we
that's
never
right.
stopped.
That's right. Oh, I would have muted my face. I mean,
Oh, your face won't be on it.
blanked it. You know, it's just been, oh gosh, I've just been twitching here. So this is the third time, I believe, introducing Yona at Yona Harvey at KGB Monday Night Poetry. But this is the first time in the Brave New World, and this is the first one that's being recorded. So I want to say some broad things, because, you know, when you introduce a poet over and over, as, you know, we introduce David or Star, it's fun, but, you know, you go kind of from the big to the small, you know, like your first couple times out, you kind of praise the framing of the houses. And then like a couple introductions later, you're like praising the sound of the doorbell, or like a tiny wood carving, you know, up in the corner of a poem. So I want to kind of keep this broad. I feel like if Yona stays at her pace, she's going to find a spot among a company of poets that includes Elizabeth Bishop, Philip Larkin, and Etheridge Knight. Poets whose complete published poems end up being, you know, under 2 inches thick, but every freaking poem in there is perfectly made and unique. The poets who never write the same poem twice, in a way, they're living for others, because it feels very good for a poet to go from zero to poem over and over again. And I imagine it's very fun to publish 8 books of poetry in a decade. You know, you get to name them all, and I mean, how fun is that? What doesn't feel as good for a poet is to just labor over every syllabic particle of a poem and then play a poem 2,000 times to the tape recorder of the brain. And at the end, when the thing is finally made, to just shatter your mold. But that sort of careful making is what makes Hemming the Water, in my opinion, the best first book by an American poet of this century. And it is in my personal top 10 volumes of poetry of the 21st century. The tension between the poem as a piece of oral art and as a piece of typographic art is a productive tension, I would say, in pretty much every poem of Yona's that I have read. She makes no suede raincoats. There's nothing that makes no sense in terms of pairing of material and function. Like, she knows what a long and a short line are good for. And you read that in the first line of a poem that is, you know, where that line is short or long. There's no tempo signatures in poems, no BPMs. So a poet has to be very crafty to establish tempo. And she'll make a long line talk fast. Like, she's got this poem, Mary J. Upswing. And it goes, the booth had a door and the table had a door and the cup. And those ands are just pumping the gas pedal, and she pulls the commas, and suddenly the voice is up on the balls of its feet and the poem is moving with tempo. So Yona has this way of getting the dynamic sound of spoken language even into a prose poem, mainly just using periods and just in varying sentence lengths and doing these, the artful fragments. And it's amazing. If you know what is hard to do in a poem, you know, read Yona and be impressed. I mean, I'm talking off the cuff now, but like when I read Louise Glick's first book, I'm like, that shit's kind of easy. I can get into it why, but that shit is kind of easy. And so I'm feeling myself. I had a beer and an IPA. Chelsea stopped drinking and I did too, but with her, and because it's mean to just keep drinking if somebody doesn't want to drink anymore. But I had a couple beers tonight. So I sometimes feel like Yona is a poet who spends a certain amount of time out at the end of the dock of the territory of the poem. Like, she's at the edge of the furthest the poem can go in the direction towards melody. And because the poem on the page can actually imply a lot of intonation, like these pitch dynamics and vowel stretch and timbre and tempo. And it's amazing because, you know, print language is just words that are silent and all the same size. And, you know, and there's hardly any marks for volume that we have except like italics and all caps. And then it's that kind of party. But, you know, anyway, Yona, kind of like Etheridge, who we mentioned already, just uses all the tools known to exist to make a poem on the page an oral thing. Line length, space, punctuation or pulling punctuation. And these are all kind of knobs on the EQ of the voice as it plays in the brain. And anyway, that it strikes me reading her poems that melody is kind of what the poem, the frontier that the poem cannot, you know, imply. You know, it just shows, you know, the kind of what she is able to how she is able to craft intonation. I'm not the only person to notice how good she is. She won the Kate Tufts Discovery Award for her first poetry collection, Hemming the Water. I admire her poems as much as any American poet born, and not just because she's a native Cincinnatian, although that doesn't hurt in my book. We welcome back and welcome to our brave new world, Yona Harvey.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back. Damn, you do such a amazing job with those intros. I cannot live up to your intros. You're such a careful and generous reader, though. So I thank you so much for that. And John, and all the KGB organizers. It's a very intimate space. I'm feeling that. I'm so happy to be here. It's funny, like, I just have to say these tiny little things before I get started. Like, it's freaking me out that I'm reading with Natasha Saje, because when I first, I don't know, started, well, I wouldn't say started to take poetry seriously, but the Starrett Prize was one of the first prizes that I followed. There weren't so many back then. And so I can remember so clearly Red Under the Skin. I remember that book. I had a different one though. It was green and red. It wasn't like the one you have. It was a paperback, I guess. So that, and then the fact that Equa Adler Melendez is here, that is crazy. That's freaking me out a little bit too, because I first saw him at the Dodge Festival so many years ago, but that was the best Dodge Festival ever. I can't even remember what year that was, 2002, maybe, something like that. Anyway, I feel like KGB is like a little magical reading space, like very good things happen in the KGB space, like including chicken wings and beers after, but yeah. Anyway, so thanks for having me back a third time. I can't believe that. That's crazy. Yeah. I'm gonna just read from the most recent book, You Don't Have to Go to Mars for Love. And that's it. Can you hear me okay? Everything's good? Okay. That. I grew up with pickles. I slept in the attic, cigarettes, sheets laced with smoke. The heat of my father's brother's old room. Larry Blackman painted for effect, and Shaka Khan's lips more like a kiss, if a kiss could walk when it came to life. If a kiss could have hips and legs and ass, well, I wanted that. And if the colors could sweat and strip me down to my slip, well, I wanted that too. Nobody knew what I was thinking up there, though maybe they wanted that. Also, I have a pug and he is snoring. He's very old. I hope you can't hear him in the background. It's not a drunk old man on the floor of my apartment. It's my dog. Okay, Segregation Continuum after Ella Baker and Glenn Ligon. A lot of the poems in this book come out of like collaborations or projects. And this one came out of I guess, assignment from Studio Museum in Harlem and Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh for the 2020 exhibition. And so I was responding to a Glenn Ligon painting. Segregation Continuum. Layered in black on white canvas, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. looking at the way we look, looking forward, stepping back, by way of upturned neck, by way of 3 steps back, looking black coded, by way of black modes, by way of reconstruction, by way of insurrection, by way of colored fountains, by way of elected Democrats or elected aristocrats. It is obvious we are a presence. Though we have been discomforted at school gates, at rental offices, at museum entrances, even we cannot rest who believe in freedom. We are to some an irritant, an iresome, tiresome lot. We do not subscribe just because something comes out of a leader's mouth, out of the mouth of a tyrant. So we are too difficult. We are much too difficult. We are much too aware. We are much too marked. We are all that matter to us that matter. We are the most comforting present by way of nod, by way of pound, by way of sup. We are always fashionable when we do not try. We do not try to insult except when we do, but we do not hesitate to speak of the things about which we agree or disagree. We participate at the level of our thinking, by way of our thinking, by way of our mass expression. We who believe in freedom cannot rest where once hundreds and even thousands of we ordinary people had taken a position that made us very uncomfortable when we decided, for instance, to walk rather than take the bus. I'll read this poem. It's called The Baseline, and I wrote it for my son a while back. When he was younger, he felt like he was getting the short stick, like my daughter had too many poems about her. He didn't have enough poems about him, so I tried to balance things out a little. Now, he doesn't care, she doesn't care, nobody cares, but back then, they sort of quasi-cared. Okay, the baseline. I was in a neurosurgeon's waiting room, awaiting Arrow's test results. He'd slammed his skull on the baseball court, and his pupils pulsed cartoony, black spirals and asterisks, and loony exclamations. His dizzy days had placed us in the clipboard's teeth, snapping. NBA season, the finals, and Dr. Phil was interviewing a boy who'd killed his mother, bashed his mother's head with a sledgehammer, and set her house on fire. It's ritual, said the doc. It's self-soothing. To bash someone's head, to set a house on fire. Okay, doc. Okay, America. Okay. I forget how daytime gnaws us till evening if we linger too long in its jaws. Everything wrong with us seemed to glow from the insides of a flat screen. I wondered what was up next. A razor, a switchblade, a machete, little bits of bone, the boy's little blonde brother nearly dying too. Okay, homemakers. Okay, ratings. A nurse walked Arrow to an exam room. Free throws and foul shots chatter. Winners and losers, favorite players. LeBron James slept somewhere between games. How many times had Arrow hit his head in the past few years? Bring it in, Arrow said when I joined him. Chill, he said. Did this mean he was the kind of son who'd hug his mother tightly before turning away? The kind of kid who shrugged off blonde boys, the kind of kid who'd leave home at 12 and assemble a band and adorn his fro with feathers and cowries and swear he learned the birds and the bees from Netflix, Grand Theft Auto, and the internet? Okay, worst fears. What was the last thing Arrow remembered? A thwack. the court's distant border. I forget how competitive he gets. I forget how fragile. Diagnosis, no games for 3 weeks. Supervised exercise, rest. Okay, inevitable. My mother didn't care much for television. Turn that stuff off, she'd say. Talk to me. I forget how mustache begins in shadow, how hairlines fade gradually. What makes a child turn? 1 year, Cleveland fans burned LeBron's jersey. Okay, Christians. Okay, Cavaliers. I forget how every son leaves us at least once. I forget how quiet a house without television. Son, don't bring any spiders home, or lovers, or trash talk. I forget how we bring those anyway. I forget how hypnotic the television. Eat your dinner, son. Eat your dinner. I'll read. This is a longer. Oh, well, I'll read. Never mind. I worked hard so my girls didn't have to serve nobody else like I did except God. And that I pulled from a book by my undergraduate Howard professor, Elizabeth Clark Lewis, whose work I appreciated her as a mentor, but I was too dumb and too young to appreciate the work, the scholarship she was doing at the time. She recorded a lot of Black domestic women workers who had moved from the South to the North, mostly in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so I went through this period where I was rereading her book again, and then just trying to pair what was happening, what I was reading in that book to things in the present, which is not totally obvious in the poem, but I just wanted to speak to that in terms of Elizabeth Clark Lewis and process, I guess. I worked hard so my girls didn't have to serve nobody else like I did except God. Candy-colored bulbs frame a girl for a holiday. If the wicked call from the other side, she doesn't hear. Blinds shut, devices blink and twitter. Before it's too late, her mother snaps a picture, anticipates angst and oddly angled aches, strawberry letters, whatevers. The mother will mark the photo tomorrow, sign, seal, we're all well. One of the last acceptable print messages. Meanwhile, soup for dinner again. What else? It's winter. Herbal constellations swivel in froth. Stir. She samples with a lean near bowing, steam on closed eyelids. Mothers ought to give thanks. Simeon, she thinks instead. And then her long gone grandmother's tattered Bible, the daughter's overdue library book concerning states' rights. Why is that? She's hardly felt hated. X's and O's glow in the daughter's palm. Look how easy, the daughter often says. She is patient with her mother. Blessed be the child at the center of snow and flu season. She flew past blessings long ago, so far from a little girl really. And oh, the last book in this book, and then I'll jump back to the middle and read a longer poem. The River Wanderer. There was a river turned to goddess, was kin to river turned to flame. As a child, I dreamt that river. None could keep me from that vision. They lowered me in the mighty waters, lowered me in the creek of shame. Others tried the brook of whispers. None could save me. None could save me. Still, I dreamt the river snowdrift. To my kin, I made no sense. Those folks out there shall never love you, said my preacher, said my pa. Still, I shivered when I wakened. Ganga of glaciers, Ganga of snow, left with mama's only bread, left to find the cold that called me. You, my sister, you, my sister. Come now, sister, ashes and all. Ganga of glaciers, Ganga of snow, Ganga of forgiven. Wash me now, sister, rest my shoulder on the shore. Lift my ashes to your sky. Once our mama raised our arms so we could speak the sacred tongues. To speak in tongues was to relent, to call the water that would drown us. Firmament, torrent, let go, torrent, let go. I'll meet you at the river's bottom, dressed in silver scales with fin. You'll clutch my hand, we'll swim in circles, taunt the serpents, taunt the sharks. And when the glaciers get to melting, all God's rivers we shall haunt. All God's rivers we shall haunt. And okay, I'm gonna read this poem in the last 3 minutes. So this one's called Hush Harbor, and it came out of a project with a Pittsburgh foundation. It was called like Love Letters to Charleston. And so it was like in a tiny little limited edition book. And it was after the shooting in the AME church. Hush Harbor, Charleston, South Carolina. 1. What does it mean to see a Black church burn? Bears Breach, Blue Star, and furthermore, I buried my sister. Hushed white roses, and furthermore, I buried my lover. And anyway, he never said forgive. June yanked yarrow, barren wart creeps. Mary, don't you weep, oh Mary. 2, and furthermore, we buried our mother. Bugbane, bee-balm, what does it mean to see a Black church burn? Up Calhoun Street, up Ravenel Bridge, and who among us speaks for us all? Not me. Too simple, too soon to say just what I feel when Black churches 3 burn, the door closing, burn, and furthermore, Black-eyed Susan, and furthermore, we buried our father. June snatched yarrow, hens and chickens, Rosettas, between rock, the hell that crept through our door of ages, Jerusalem, sage, lavender, cotton, coreopsis corners, 4, and furthermore, I buried my grandson, bearded iris. What does it mean when our Black blood turned lamb's ear, Texas sage, false red yucca, swat moths away, sinners and sin, must we always invite them in? False indigo, gray feather, thrift, must we always invite them in? 5, and furthermore, I buried my anguish, coronation gold in my palms after rain, and furthermore, violet. What does it mean when we memorize psalms, or stand in the way that sinners take, or umbrella sedge, joe pie weed, or sparrow over sycamore? 6, forget me not, Father, forget me not, Mother, forget me not, Saint, for you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb, and furthermore, I buried my husband, bamboo, gout weed, evening primrose. Mother, don't you weep. Mother, don't 7, moan and plantain, lily, widen your shawl. Solomon's seal before you, tighten it. Come by here, Lord. Come by here, Lord. What does it mean when our suffering returns twofold, threefold, fourfold, 10? And if they turn, let us shout, saints. What shall we shout when our suffering 8 returns? If they can burn a cross, they can ladies' mantle, burn a church. If they can burn a church, they can burn choral bells. If they can burn choral bells, they can 1 bullet, 2 bullet, 10 bullet, more hushed white roses, baby's breath, prickly pear, I lack nothing. 9, blood on a church pew like snow in summer, Dutch iris, dead nettle, baby's breath, delphinium, Queen Anne's lace, I lack nothing. I shall not shovel winter snow. No blood on pews, nor floors, nor stairs at summer's door. Thank you.
You can unmute yourselves. And could you repeat the name of that chapbook?
Psalms for Mother Emmanuel.
One more time. Sorry, I think I got.
Yeah, the connection went wonky as you were saying it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That was incredible. Is there a vinyl record of you reading poems that is on its way into the world at any point? Really?
You know, that's funny. There was an artist here in Pittsburgh. He made a little tiny record. I do have a little record reading a version of the title poem, You Don't Have to Go to Mars for Love. But I don't even know where or how I would play that record, but yeah.
Well, I mean, that was so excellent. That was just so excellent to listen to. Thank you guys so much. I'm coming right back. I have to go to the little fella's room.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's fantastic.
Go ahead, John.
Oh no, I was just gonna say thank you guys so much, Yona. It's been, I think the last time I saw you was at KGB bar.
It was.
Yeah,
It was.
on the steps there like years ago. I think I was like coming out of Stillwater or something. Did you know that place closed, where we always got the beer and wings and stuff?
No, I
It's-
didn't know.
It is quite a blow.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.